KitaSean. Hey everyone, KitaSean here. So as many of you guys know, Fate Grand Order JP has restarted the 2020 event, Servant Summer Camp. It's currently going on right now. I thought I would make a video talking about if you should roll for the Summer Servants or not. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and talk about every single servant and tell you guys if these gachas are worth rolling. So first of all, let's start off with the Summer Gacha Part 1 servants, 5-star, Moon Cancer, Seishoin Kiara. Let's start off with her Noble Phantasm. It's an Arts AoE MP that does extra damage when enemies have a mental debuff. Its overcharge effect has a chance to instant kill. The percentage of the instant death is really high, so it is possible to go in a quest assuming that you can kill the enemies with her Noble Phantasm. With this Noble Phantasm, you are able to 3-turn farm. Her passive skills are really strong. Both her first and second passive skills help increase 12% damage with her Noble Phantasm, which again makes it possible to do the 3-turn farming. Probably one of the best passive skills setups in the game. Like, I highly think that. Now let's talk about her skills. It's pretty long, so bear with me here. Her first skill, Mermaid Flesh EX, allows her to grant herself Guts for 1 time for 5 turns, removes own debuffs, recovers her HP, and increases MP damage by 20% for 3 turns, grants Mermaid's Nourishment Regeneration buff for 4 turns, which allows her to rank up her skills every turn for 4 turns. This basically means that both her second and third skill can rank up twice, allowing her to get more buffs. Her second skill, Supernatural Power B, has an MP battery max charge of 30% and it gains 20 crit stars. Now, once the rank up happens, this will become 40% MP battery and 25 crit stars, and it will become 50% MP battery and 30 crit stars if it ranks up a second time. But once it ranks up, the skills do get a demerit where it removes a skill rank, and the chances are pretty high. Again, if it ranks up again, it will get rid of 2. So as the turns go by, the chances of it will increase. Now her third skill, Clan Palace, grants the party evade, removes all enemy evasion buffs, inflicts Bewitching debuff on enemies for 3 turns, which reduces critical attack by 10%, reduces defense by 3 turns, and art resistance by 20% for 3 turns. And of course, when the skill is ranked, the percentages increase. Testing out Kiara this past year, I can probably say that her damage really depends on her third skill. If the third skill goes through, it's amazing, but it doesn't, it's okay. Though she can 3-turn farm and stuff during events when the quest you are trying to 3-turn farm has a servant, which is most of the time, it makes her third skill unreliable at times because all the enemy servants have a good chance to resist the debuffs. I'm sure there are those who don't really care too much about it, but for those who do, it gets pretty annoying. I think she's really strong, but I don't think she is a must roll, especially if you have other ways to 3-turn farm. But if you do plan on using her, MP2 is probably a must. Next we have Ilya Archer. Her Noble Phantasm is a quick AoE that can ignore evade for 1 turn, and of course this activates before the Noble Phantasm. With overcharge, she increases all her own cards for 1 turn, and this also activates before the Noble Phantasm hits, and depending on the level of the MP, the percentage is of course higher. Passive skills are pretty standard, the biggest one definitely being the MP charge every turn. Now her skills. First skill, High Pressure A, allows her to increase her own quick card for 3 turns, increase critical star absorption for her quick cards for a turn, and increase critical damage for a turn, and I believe this is a great buff, especially for a quick type servant. Second skill grants herself invincibility for a turn for 3 turns, increase own MP generation for 3 turns, increase attack of children servant trait allies for 3 turns. Her third skill allows her to charge her own MP by 30% to increase own critical damage for 3 turns, and a 70% chance to recover her own HP by 500 every turn for 5 turns. I think Ilya is a really strong servant with skills that have a high percentage and is able to 3-turn farm. Is she worth the roll? I think so, especially if you are looking for a quick AoE archer. I also think having Kiara swimsuit in the same gacha makes it worth it to roll as well. Next we have Brynhilder. She has an AoE buster MP that ignores invincibility for a turn, and with overcharge it will be able to increase her buster cards for a turn, and both of these activate before the MP hits. Class skills are pretty normal, and her skills First skill allows her to grant herself evade for 2 attacks for 3 turns and reduces the damage taken from 3 attacks for 3 turns. Second skill increases own MP every turn for 3 turns at 20% max level and gain crit stars every turn for 3 turns max 10 stars. And then third skill will increase her art and buster card for 3 turns and increase in ally servants that have the trait Brynhilder Berserker for 3 turns for 30% at max level. Recently, there have been a lot of battles where the enemies have invincibility or evade, so ignore invincibility effect on her MP helps out so much. I wouldn't say she is amazingly strong or anything, but she is definitely a really useful berserker, plus she looks amazing. I think Summer Gacha 1 is definitely worth rolling. Now let's talk about Summer 2 Gacha servants, starting off with Abigail Williams. Her Noble Phantasm is an AoE buster MP that removes all enemy defense buffs before the MP hits, and with overcharge reduces enemy defense for 3 turns. Passive skills are pretty normal, and now her skills. Her first skill inflicts sleep status for 2 turns to one enemy. It's basically a stun, but once the enemy is hit while asleep, they will basically be back to normal. It removes buffs and reduces defense for 1 attack, but it will be during when the sleep status is activated. I think the skill is whatevers. If an enemy uses a skill, then it's super strong, but for players, it's whatevers. Maybe you can take advantage of the skill during challenge quests, but I don't think there were any this past year that makes it worthwhile. So they definitely need to fix the sleep status in some way. Second skill, inflict terror status for 1 time, 3 turns to all enemies. This allows a chance to activate debuff every turn, and when it does activate, a 500% chance to stun enemy for a turn. It also reduces defense for 3 turns. Third skill increases MP charge up to 50%, increase on debuff resistance for 3 turns, and reduces 1 enemy bust resistance for 3 turns. I do think her skills are solid, but a little bit lackluster. I think the biggest problem with Swimsuit Abby is definitely her Noble Phantasm damage. If I were to give her a buff right now, it definitely would be for her Noble Phantasm. Again, I do think her skill 1 needs to be fixed a little bit as well, but if she can get a Noble Phantasm damage buff and a fix to her first skill, then I think she's going to be a pretty strong servant. We were really hoping that she would get a buff of some kind this summer rerun event, but it never came, unfortunately. Next, we have Tomoe Godin. She has an AoE Arts MP that increases her Buster and Arts performance for 1 turn, which activates before the MP, and it also inflicts burn damage for 5 turns. Overcharge increases the burn damage. Passive skills are okay. Her skills grants Gut, increase on critical damage for 3 turns, and when max level 100%, it has a 500% chance to grant Nighthawk, which is a delayed debuff for 3 turns, and it basically stuns herself for a turn after 3 turns. Second skill increases her arts card performance and increases critical star absorption for her arts cards for a turn. Third skill allows her to gain critical stars every turn for 3 turns, and debuff immunity for 1 time for 5 turns. I think Tomoe Godin Saber is really strong. She can produce a lot of crit damage, and not only that, her MP animation is really fast, so it makes it easier for faster farming. She is able to 3-turn farm, but it's kind of hard to do it. You will definitely need to have a good setup for that to work. Last is Munasaki Shikibu. Looking at her skills, it doesn't seem appealing at all, but she is actually really strong. She is able to regain a lot of her Noble Phantasm after using her Noble Phantasm, especially with her third skill. There wasn't that many great art single target writers until she came out, but of course with Nemo out, not a lot of players use her anymore because Nemo is just that strong. So if you already have Nemo, then I think it's okay to skip on her, but if you are looking for a sexy single target arts writer, then I highly recommend her. I also recommend rolling for Honey Lake CE, which is really strong, and it comes out in the Part 2 gacha. So yeah, there you guys have it. I think both gachas are pretty worth to roll. I think gacha 1 is definitely the more a worthwhile one because, again, Kiara is really strong. 3-turn farming is just really good. Same thing with Ilya. The quick farming is pretty good. And again, I think Brynhilde, she's not the strongest, but she's very useful. And again, for the Part 2 gacha, Tomoe Godin, I think is very useful as well. Munasaki Shikibu is strong, but if you have Nemo, you don't really need her. And Abby, even though I do believe she is probably the weakest servant in this entire lineup, I do think if she gets buffs, she probably will become a monster. So yeah, that's just my opinion. But what do you guys think? Comment down below and tell me if you guys are planning the role for these servants. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Laters.